o'clock agenda. First up today is SB472 SD1, and a proposed HD1 has been circulated. Bottom line is the bill makes 20 ounces or less, 20 ounces, 20 grams or less than marijuana, just a civil violation as opposed to the criminal violation it is currently. So first up we have Department of Prosecuting Attorney Maui. Afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. You have a testimony in opposition to this bill. Two key points. First of all, the idea that these promoting a dangerous drug in the third degree cases are clogging the courts is untrue. You can look at the testimony submitted by the Department of the Attorney General with the statistics that show that of cases that are just the charge of promoting a detrimental drug in the third degree, those cases aren't as many as people think. Most of those cases are tied to other cases, and that's why those charges come up. Secondly, we are very concerned that the bill only affects people 18 and over, and so it doesn't have any prohibition as far as minors concerned, and we think that sends the wrong message to the youth of our community. Again, we are in opposition to this bill, and I'll be available to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Just a reminder too, I know it says it on the hearing notice, but when you come up to testify orally, we have a 2-minute time limit, so when the alarm goes off, please wrap up as quick as you can. Next is Lance Goto, Department of the Attorney General. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jim. Committee members. Lance Goto with the department. The department is in strong opposition to this measure. Both the SD1 and the proposed HD1, which decriminalize the possession of smaller amounts of marijuana. We believe these bills promote recreational use, and the message being sent to our community members, to our youth, is that marijuana is not harmful, it's okay to use. The way this bill is set up, adults could possess up to 20 grams or less, and only be subject to a civil fine. Under the SD1, it'd be $1,000. Under the HD1, it'd be about $100. As far as the youth are concerned, anyone under 18 would not be subject to any penalty or punishment for possession of 20 grams or less of marijuana under the HD1, proposed HD1. And what this means is that marijuana is going to be more prevalent in our community, will be used by more people, by more of our youth. And the studies have all shown that marijuana is harmful. It's Schedule 1 drug. And it's prohibited under federal law for that reason. It's addictive with many negative effects. In our testimony, we point out the United States Department of Health and Human Services Dawn report. In 2002, the estimated number of marijuana-related visits to emergency rooms in the United States was about 130,000. In 2008, 6 years later, that number jumped up to about 375,000. It's becoming a greater problem. We do want to point out that one justification proposed for the decriminalization is a backlog in the judiciary. We have done research on it, and our numbers do not bear that out. We checked with the judiciary also, and they did check on their numbers, and they do not find any backlog either. If you're interested, they said they're willing to talk to anybody and provide some documentation.
All right, thanks very much. Yeah. Okay, I believe we have a quorum, so let's go ahead and just switch over and vote on SB286. SB286 amends the state legislative reapportionment law to require that reapportionment be based on the total number of permanent residents within the state of Hawaii in addition to the U.S. and Hawaii constitutions. So my recommendation is to pass out with one amendment, which is to make it effective upon approval. This bill is potentially being used to settle the lawsuit that's going on about reapportionment, and I'd like to keep it alive just in case it becomes useful in that regard. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none. Vice Chair Har.
Okay, voting on Senate Bill 286, Senate Draft 1. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti?
Aye.
Representative Brower? Aye. Representative Cabanilla? Excused. Representative Carroll? Excused. Representative Ito? Excused. Representative Kawakami? Excused. Representative Lee? Excused. Representative Suji?
Aye.
Representative Woolley?
Aye.
Representative McDermott?
Yes.
Representative Thielen?
Aye.
Noting the presence of Representative Lee, your vote, please.
Aye.
Representative Kawakami?
Aye.
Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll go ahead and switch back to SB472. Next testifier is Department of the Prosecuting Attorney, Honolulu.
I was distracted by Representative Kawakami. Anyways, John Ricky Carmasu, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney, Honolulu. We're in opposition to this, and addressing the concern of clogging in the system, the court system. Both Tricia Nakamatsu and myself have prosecuted or worked on cases regarding marijuana, as well as other type of cases. And if I had to compare the other type of crimes, the crimes that do clog our cases would be more, for Honolulu's case, would be more like park closures. There's so many more park closure cases, which is a petty misdemeanor, and it's an ordinance by the City and County of Honolulu that kind of takes up a lot of our time in court. As far as marijuana cases, I handled the district court 7th floor criminal cases, so I've seen a number of the marijuana cases, but it's nowhere near the type of numbers for other type of crimes that we're seeing. So, and we listed some numbers in our testimony that you can see. As far as 2012, there were 221 counts for 712, 1249, and these are charges that were also with other type of crimes as well. So if we made it standalone, it would be a little bit more lower. So that's to kind of show the amount of cases we're working on currently in Honolulu. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is Office of the Public Defender. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhoads and Vice Chair Har, members of the committee. Timothy Ho, Public Defender's Office. Our office doesn't really have a position one way or another on this bill. We just want to offer some commentary. First of all, the 20 gram amount, we would suggest that it be changed to 28 grams because the current law refers to an ounce, and the conversion rate per from ounce to grams is 28 grams. And we would like to see consistency in the criminal statutes. So wherever there is 20 grams entered, we would suggest 28 grams. And I believe there is another place where a pound was referenced, and we would ask that the correct amount be the conversion should be 16 times the 28 grams. And I have it listed somewhere in my testimony. Furthermore, we note the concerns of the law enforcement and prosecutors about the minors under 18 not being addressed in this bill. All we would need to do is strike by a person 18 years of age or older from line 6 of page 1. We would ask that the minors not be criminalized. There is a push in the family court to separate these type of offenders from the more serious offenders, because what studies have shown is that when they get mixed up, they become more likely to reoffend. So we would ask that the decriminalized portion for people under 18 be kept, but perhaps the addition of mandatory counseling should they get arrested and charged with this offense should be inserted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Department of Public Safety. Afternoon.
Afternoon, Sharon Har. Sharon Har. Keith Kamita for Department of Public Safety. You've heard the testimony of the Attorney General, and we support that testimony. Just a few points we wanted to make. One of the big issues with us is that by decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana, we feel you send the wrong message to our youth. And I can't tell you strong enough, that's so important. I kind of talked to my daughter about this last night and just telling her, what do you think? And she's a student at Todai University. And she goes, you know, Dad, I know people who smoke marijuana. And what her words was, it's an ambition killer. Because they do nothing after they use this drug. They sit around, do nothing. And in college, that's the end of your career. You not doing well in school. She said she can't stress enough. But as far as the department, we feel basically the same, that this is a very important bill and very dangerous bill if you let it pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the Department of Education.
Chair, we stand on our opposition.
In opposition. Okay, thank you. Next is Gary Yabuta, Police Department, City and County of Maui. Came all the way up. You might as well testify. Afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Gary Yabuta. I have 34 years in the criminal justice system, and this is the first time that I have appeared in front of testimony like that because I feel it's that important. I feel law enforcement is in a unique position. We have a lens to see our communities and our society, and we have to, because we have to predict the future. I strongly oppose this law because I think it will deter our society and our community, and it's endangering our children, our youth, our future. I know there's going to be a lot of numbers going back and forth, but again, I'm a law enforcement officer. I'm a cop. I live in the streets that I work. I see the future, and the future is today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Harry Kubojiri, Police Department, City and County of, County of Hawaii. In opposition, next is Marie McCauley, Honolulu Police Department.
If it's okay, can Honolulu Police Department will just get our testimony
Sure,
all over at once?
please.
Is that okay?
That's fine. I'll even give you 6 minutes. How's that?
You know, that's very kind.
I'll stand on my written testimony.
Go ahead.
I'll begin. I just wanted to, I know you've seen all the comments already, so I just wanted to emphasize that passage of this bill, would be you can possess 20 grams, and that really is quite a lot. 20 grams of marijuana can be reasonably expected to make anywhere between 30 and 40 marijuana cigarettes. And I'm very concerned that we work hard as far as drug dealing going and to keep the parks and areas around the schools and vehicles, and I know Representative Thielen has been very concerned about Kailua District Park. This measure would pretty much allow people to sit at the park with 20 grams of marijuana in their pocket, and unless we catch them dealing, we can't do anything about that. It might be a civil fine, but there's no criminal violation. So you can't drink alcohol at the park, but you can have pot at the park. So, I think separating our kids from this as much as you can is the best and healthiest way to deal with this issue. When you're going to have marijuana possession out there, you will have more drug dealing. I mean, it's supply and demand. You're not going to let them use it and nobody's not going to give it to them. People will fill the void and they will make money, and it will continue to grow. So, I really hate to see our community move in this direction. I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's healthy. And we strongly oppose this measure. Thank you.
If I could just add real quickly, the 2012 White House National Drug Control Strategy cited the presence of messages and policies that downplay the consequences of drug use as one of the main reasons for the increase in use of marijuana and other illegal drugs by America's youth. So I think this bill would be inconsistent with the goals of not only the National Drug Control Strategy, but of the Police Department and of public safety in general. And as far as the backlog of court cases, of the 594 persons arrested for marijuana possession in 2012, only 7 spent more than 10 days in jail. So we hardly think that's going to create any freeing up of backlog in the court system.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The
Okay.
Honolulu Police Department strongly opposes this bill.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Daryl Perry, Police Department, County of Kauai. Oh, okay. In opposition. Next we have Hakeem Uwansafi, Hawaii Public Housing Authority. Also in opposition. Pamela Lichty. Oh, I'm sorry, you're here. I'm sorry. Director, go ahead.
Aloha, everyone. I just want to say hi. Yeah, we just want to emphasize that we are actually in strong opposition of that bill, just because of the image that's going to give to these kids that we have in our housing that it's cool to smoke marijuana. Also, with the ACOP that we have zero tolerance. Forgive me, I was running up, so I don't miss this. That sounds important. It's already difficult for us to enforce certain rules, and one of them is the ACOP rules. We have zero tolerance for drugs. By having this, it'll be a big issue for us. And third, it gives an opportunity to the drug dealers to use our children, because now there isn't any big consequence for having such a thing. And finally, if the police department are opposing it, I'm concerned about who we're going to call after a while if the only consequence is $100. So that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Pamela Lichty, Drug Policy Action Group, or her designee.
Pamela regrets she can't be here. She's off island, but she does hope that you'll read her testimony.
We did.
Indeed, part of it is included in my own, which I assume will be heard shortly.
Okay, thank you. Next is Tracy Ryan, Libertarian Party of Hawaii. In support, prefers the HD1. Next is Andrea Tischler, Big Island Americans for Safe Access. In support, Lori Temple, ACLU. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhoads and members of the committee. My name is Lori Temple. I'm the staff attorney and legislative program director for the ACLU of Hawaii, and we strongly support this bill. Decriminalization will allow Hawaii to shift approximately $9 million per year in law enforcement resources towards more serious threats to public safety, a redirection that Hawaii voters support. 16 states have determined that decriminalization is a more practical and fair way to deal with marijuana possession than incarceration and lasting criminal records. Youth in particular have been devastated by the consequences of criminal laws against marijuana possession, which are often more dangerous than the use of marijuana itself. Our laws are wasteful and unfair, and we need to direct our scarce resources towards serious and violent crime and invest in programs that will actually prevent drug abuse. Decriminalization takes us in a step in the right direction, and we strongly support this bill, and thank you for hearing it.
Thanks very much. Next up is Bart Dame, Progressive Democrats of Hawaii. In support. Next is James Olson, Americans for Democratic Action Hawaii. Also in support, Kat Brady, Community Alliance in Prisons. In support, Alan Shin, Coalition for Drug-Free Hawaii. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhoads, Vice Chair Har, and committee members. My name is Alan Shin from Coalition for Drug-Free Hawaii, and we are opposed to SB472 SD1. And I think what our opinion is that permissive marijuana laws are the gateway to legalization, and I think that that's something that we need to push back on. Also, because we're a prevention and treatment provider in the community, we see a lot of youth and young adults who come in with marijuana-related kinds of problems. And we see that it does cause emotional, psychological, behavioral kinds of problems for them if they're using it persistently and chronically, and they're using the high-potency marijuana, which is freely available now. And we also have seen psychological problems with depression, increased paranoia, mood swings, and lower functioning overall in our youth who are still, if you're under 18, you're still going through brain development, and it's not a good thing. According to NIDA, recent studies found that loss of learning and memory with persistent heavy use of marijuana before the age of 18, there was lost cognitive abilities that were not restored, even though they quit smoking marijuana as adults. So there are some long-lasting kinds of harm that can come about of this, and I think SB472 SD1 really lowers that perception of harm, and I think that's what we're trying to avoid. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Glenn Ida, Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Local 675. In opposition, Gail Braceros or Braceros, Weed and Seed. Also in opposition, Carol McNamee and Archie Cole, Mad Hawaii. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhoads and Vice Chair Har and members of the committee. I am here on behalf of MAD, but since this is a little bit out of our kuleana, I'm only making comments and restricted to the impaired driving part of what happens with any kind of drug. MAD worked very hard for a number of years to get drugs included in our statutes for an illegal substance to consume and then operate a vehicle. And that's because we realized that it was not only alcohol that was creating problems on our highways. And so today, Hawaii already leads the nation in the percent of traffic crashes that are alcohol related. And now in the 4-year period, 2007 to 2010, the number of drivers in fatal crashes who tested positive for alcohol averaged 40%. But then on top of that, almost 1/4 of the total number of drivers involved in fatal crashes tested positive for other drugs, and that was 23%. And leading the list of the drugs that were involved was THC. So considered together, almost half the drivers tested positive for either alcohol or other drugs. So in addition, most concerning to MAD is that young drivers are the most involved in the drug-related crashes. The highest percentage, 36% of drivers involved in fatal crashes who tested positive for drugs were under the age of 21. From age 21 to 24, the drivers testing positive averaged about 26%, also high. And then there's also pedestrians involved in drug-related crashes. So all in all, we do have concerns about that we think that you should be aware of. And as Alan also mentioned, because we're doing preventive things for underage drinking, it's the same thing with marijuana and other drugs. It affects the brain, and that's why we have a 21-year-old drinking age. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Chris Cofield, Imua Alliance. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Rhoads, Vice Chair Har, members of the committee. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Caulfield, representing the Imua Alliance, testifying in support of this measure. The first, I want to note that comparisons that are sometimes made between alcohol and marijuana to justify decriminalization of the latter, including by our group, are in absolutely no way meant to belittle the impact of alcohol abuse on our community, particularly in the form of drunk driving as just articulated by MAD. It's an abhorrently reckless act that must be firmly denounced and combated by lawmakers. That said, we do support decriminalization of marijuana, as well as a proposed fine of $100. Despite its federal classification, cannabis consumption, we feel, parallels the legal drug of alcohol far more than harder drugs, while marijuana abuse affects a percentage of the population over 4 times smaller than the percent afflicted by the abuse of alcohol, which carries a greater number of correlating incidents of abuse-related violence. Moreover, prosecution of drug crimes, including marijuana, disproportionately targets minorities, leading to elevated incarceration rates for nonviolent crimes. And finally, we note that an update to budgetary implications of marijuana decriminalization and legalization for Hawaii, a report prepared in 2012 by UH economist David C. Nixon, said that state and county law enforcement agencies spent $9,300,000 in 2011 to enforce marijuana possession laws, money that we feel could be better spent on such items as education, infrastructure, and human services. Finally, we encourage you to consider replacing references to 20 grams or less of marijuana to 1 ounce or less for the reasons articulated by the public defender, as well as for consonance with similar justice reform efforts related to cannabis consumption that are being proposed and in some cases enacted in other states. And we also would encourage you to use this bill to amend HRS Section 302A-1002, reporting of crimes at schools, to reflect the changes that would be enacted by this law, and that provision is currently included in the current version of 472, the SD1 that passed out of the Senate. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next up is Myron Burney, Natural Cancer Wellness Foundation.
Hi.
Afternoon.
Thank you. Marijuana has actually been shown to cure cancer, and there's a water-soluble extract that's non-psychedelic that specifically cures prostate cancer. So it's an important medicine. This, as one of the law enforcement people pointed out, this kind of protects the recreational use of marijuana, but it doesn't give any protection to the medical use of marijuana. And the police department is actively and aggressively arresting cancer patients, stealing all their medicine, terrorizing their families, such things like that. So the right of privacy kicks in the state of Hawaii. All during the prior House hearings, we heard about federal law and federal policy. The federal law policy is now no law enforcement for the recreational use of marijuana. As soon as Obama became president, there was no law enforcement against the medical use. So on a federal level, the right of privacy kicks in, and they do not arrest cancer patients at all. So we need to come up to date with the Hawaii statutes, which says that marijuana is a medicine. Give it the right of privacy it deserves. It's better than an abortion. It has nothing to do with alcohol. Marijuana legalization was opposed in California by the alcohol group because it reduces the consumption of alcohol. And marijuana has less of a problem in driving than things like Xanax, which are freely given out for anxiety and a lot of other problems. Marijuana is actually a safe and effective medicine. Most importantly, just go over my testimony. And why would anybody need to go to jail in 2013 when the recreational use is getting zero law enforcement? Zero. I would suggest deleting the 20 thing. 28 is mathematically appropriate, but I would just make it all marijuana, and I'd make it a $1 fine instead of $100, $1 fine, and all marijuana, because it should be legalized. It's a safe and effective medicine, safer than aspirin. There's actually no bad side effects that come from marijuana. That's all just a law enforcement hoax. They don't have a right to a medical opinion. They're not medically educated. They're not up to date. The other gentleman was talking about people in the criminal justice system. He gets paid. His livelihood depends upon marijuana drug busts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Angela Flynn in support. Barbara Polk in support. Elizabeth Kellum in opposition. Okay, there's a long list. I'm going to start reading the names quicker, and if you're here, please come up if you want to testify. Karen Chun in support. Alexander Jones in support. Arnold Rabin in support. Barney Choi Nakeki Maloa in opposition. Carlos Trahan. No, my computer did something odd there. In support. Chance King in support. Chi Mock in opposition. Christopher Abernathy in support. Cindy Psyche in opposition. Claudia Charters in support. Cody F. in support. Christie in support. Deborah Patterson in support. Duke Alhoun in support. Edmund Hune in opposition. Gary Shimabukuro in opposition. Gerald Matsunaga in opposition. Helene Adams in support. James Macy in support. Janice Palma Glennie in support. Joan Lander in support. Joe Bertram in support. Joe Breesy in support. Kai Takayama in opposition, Kaleo Shimabukuro in opposition, Kathy Cole in opposition, Ken Yamamoto from Hawaii Gas in opposition, Lawrence Shimabukuro in opposition, Leah Bussell in support, Lee Eisenstein in support, Leighton Lum in opposition, Lisa Kervin in support, Lynn Bittel in support, Lynn Merrill in support, Mark Dumingsil with comments, Mark Nelson in opposition, Matt Binder in support, Matthew Rifkin in support, Mike Pellerin in support, Mona Ancheta in support, Mirna Iwamasa in opposition, Natalie in opposition, Orion Adamson in support, Paul Armentano in support, Peter Whitaker in support, Rafael Marquez in support, Ricardo Tubbs in opposition, Rich Waxman in support, Ricky Roberts comments, Ricky Shimabukuro opposition, Robert Newman opposition, Anthony Julius Lanuti in support, Arlene Fontaine, oh I'm sorry, come on down.
Hi. We just put in our application, so we are.
Which one were you?
Anthony Julius.
Okay, great, thank you.
So we are now officially the normal Hawaii chapter. But I just wanted to testify that there's been numerous studies done on decriminalization. It's not a new thing. It was done in the 60s or 70s. And all of those studies show that there's no increase in the use of marijuana. I had on my phone 25 studies I was going to read to you. There's not an increase in marijuana use caused by decriminalization. There has been studies that show legalization does cause it to increase slightly, which might change some of those alcoholics into pot smokers and reduce our DUI situation. But it's not happening. I just wanted to testify that 1 out of every 10 people, there's a good portion in this room who would be in jail. Like if we were to enforce this law, it would be almost a Gestapo type thing. If we were to go and drug test everybody in our state and throw them all in jail, we're talking about having 100,000 people in jail. And you know, that's a lot. That's a big. They may run through we know that they run through the court and they get rid of these cases. It's a slap on the wrist, but still the law says that 100,000 people belong in jail for a year. We don't have the jails for that. And I think this is a softening, a more realistic position of what's really happening out there. The cops do not bust everybody. They don't. I had a friend tell me, oh, they don't even know it's not decriminalized here. People don't know. Isn't it decriminalized here? A cop pulled me over, I got a ticket. I guess he let him off, and he wrote him a ticket for something else. But as far as I know, if a cop pulls you over, you get a ticket. You go to jail. And so most people think it's they don't even understand our rules. They think it was decriminalized years ago. But again, last time I brought up a kid, his name is Hunter Shirashi, and he was a student at Windward Community College. On his last day of school, he got caught with a gram of weed, kicked out, given all Fs, kicked out of school and thrown in jail. And I just think that's a crime against him. In a moral aspect, what happened to him did not help him, it hurt him.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up was Arlene Fountain in opposition, Brian in support, Christine Olanda in opposition, Deborah Lope.
Brian Metzko?
Just says Brian. You can grab the slot if you like. Come on up.
Hi, Brian Metzko. Thank you for letting me speak. I wrote a testimony. I'm a veteran with PTSD. I joined the military at 17 years old. After 4 back-to-back deployments while being in Iraq, I noticed things were wrong. The military quickly pawned it off as other things. Shortly after that, I couldn't cope with life, and I received a DUI, and they used it as their chance to get rid of me. To this day, I get nothing from the VA unless I pay for it. I'm pretty much on my own. The medicines they do give me make me suicidal. So I empathize with many of these veterans that choose rather to live on the street than to take these meds. And it really makes me concerned when I hear that Hawaii wants to pass a law to force these veterans so that way they can just get them off the street. Even though last year, more active duty service members committed suicide than were killed in Afghanistan. And so I feel that I must speak out and say that I am a veteran with PTSD. I hold down a job. I'm involved in a nonprofit organization. I volunteer regularly to the community. I brought these lovely flowers in today. I'm on my son's policy council for his preschool. You know, people in the community look up to me. But one thing that I have to hide every day is that in order to cope with my PTSD, sometimes I need to smoke marijuana. And I'm a criminal, and every day I have to face the fact that someday it could come back on me. And so I'm throwing myself on the mercy of the board, saying, please, you know, for the sake of me and my family and the rest of the veterans, you know, I ask that you please consider SB472. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the flowers. Next up is Christine Olanda in opposition, Deborah Lopez in opposition, Eric Airhorn in support, Francis Rivero in opposition, Jerry Trinidad in opposition, Kelfreda Wataoka in opposition, Kyle Sleppy in opposition with amendments. Oh, come on up.
And actually, I'm in support of it.
Oh, you're in support. Okay.
So I guess I messed that up.
Afternoon.
So, like you said, I'm Kyle Sleppy. I'm in support of this bill, but I do have some concerns with it, and I would like to see lower fine amounts because I think that it's very unreasonable to have a $1,000 fine. Say somebody is found with a gram of marijuana, a $1,000 fine. I would rather sit in jail than pay $1,000, especially since I wouldn't have $1,000. I would like to see that there's no charge for intent to distribute unless there's evidence found for intent to distribute, because that's not listed in this bill as far as I've read. I'd also like to see that multiple fines don't add up to some type of charge or criminal offense, because I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people getting multiple charges or multiple fines under this bill. And this bill would free law enforcement resources and court and jail resources and let them pursue actual criminal violations rather than more civil matters. As stated in SB 1460 from 2011, 65% of misdemeanor marijuana drug cases brought in district court were dismissed, stricken, or not prosecuted. Approximately 25% of those resulted in convictions, most of which were probation. Decriminalization studies stated in SB 1460 show few are actually criminally pursued, and if they are, like I said, probation is given, which is wasting more time and resources. So my main thing is that it's wasting resources and money to deal with people who shouldn't even be in trouble at all, because compared to other drugs, marijuana is not near as dangerous or harmful or problematic to the community. And let's see here. In Section 329A of SB 1460, a fine of $100 is shown, which I would like to see versus the $1,000 you have, or even lower, or no fine at all. And overall, decriminalization does not raise use by substantial amounts as claimed by law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Larry Caldwell.
I would also like to give you something.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Larry Caldwell in support, Lori Leigh Nishida in opposition, Marian Shimabukuro in opposition, Marjorie Irway in support, Marcia Nakasone in opposition, Rin Walker in support, Robert Slavin in support, Ronald Kato in opposition, Sandy Shimabukuro in opposition, Sean Haggerty in opposition, Shari Christie in support, Sherian Witt in support, Terry Heedy in support, and I've killed. Oh, Ms. Heedy.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Committee chairs, and I've lost all the committee members. You know what? I'm not going to take very long anyway, but I did want to talk about the impact that they keep talking about on our younger people. We haven't really done any credible studies, but Denmark did. And they have found out that, of course, nobody wants their children to use marijuana. I mean, nobody wants it diverted that way, and nobody would ever. I have offered to go with Representative Thielen to the park of her choice, and we will beat the bastards back out of the park. It's not a problem. But if you're, you know, when you're talking, I don't want the kids using it, and I don't want anybody using it that has psychotic issues. If you already have schizophrenia tendencies to do that, if you have an addictive behavior going on, you can be addicted to marijuana or anything else for that matter, but you're going to be schizophrenic and you're going to have those problems. I do not believe that decriminalization will lead to further use by our children. If I thought that, I would not sit here and do this. But I do believe it has destroyed, absolutely destroyed people's lives over a small amount of marijuana. There have been children in our school systems, in our high schools, that have been caught with these things. We don't need to prosecute them. We don't need to further give them a criminal education by putting them into a criminal system, a criminal justice system. Adults with marijuana, they've made it seriously. It has been misclassified. It is not a harmful drug like heroin, cocaine, bath salts, which is, people go to substitutes for marijuana, like bath salts. That's something you don't want your kid involved with. You don't want them eating somebody's face off under an aqueduct or something. Bath salts are really bad and do immediate brain damage. The brain is fried, toasted, gone. So this is not like that. This is marijuana. Please decriminalize, save millions, billions, zillions of dollars, and hope you get time to vote today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Terry Murphy in support, TJ Sims in support, Tom Wallace in support, Trenton Sousa in support, Vincent Gallagher in support, Bill Smith in opposition, Carl York in opposition, David Stevenson in support, Kenneth Kobataki, Delta Construction Corporation in opposition, Junet Higashihara in opposition, Robert Patrici in support, Michelle Nihipali in support, Noreen Furitani in opposition, Don Suha in opposition, Lena Alainos in opposition, Wendy Gibson in support, Edmund Lee in opposition, Karen Lee in opposition, Ryan Kanakaole, I don't think I said that right, Kanakaole, yeah, I guess so, in support, Wendy Gibson in support, Kelvin Lee in opposition, Galen Baker in support, Richard Miller in support, Nina Ota in opposition. Mr. Miller, welcome.
Thank you. Chair Rhoads, Vice Chair Har, and distinguished members of this committee. I'm a retired law professor from Richardson School of Law. I came here in '73 to help start the law school. I sit on the board of both the Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii and also Kokua Council. And while I'm speaking on my own behalf, I assure you that both organizations support this measure. Something I'd like to note is that putting this in at 20 grams, I think is a mistake. It should go in for an ounce. How many people know what a gram is? Did you know? A gram is 0.0363 of an ounce. Most of us don't know that. An ounce is 28.350 of a 28.350 grams. If you're going to hold people responsible civilly or criminally, at least make it easier for them to figure out how much they're supposed to have. And most of us know what an ounce is anyway, and so we have a good start for figuring out how much it is, but I don't think any of us know what a gram is. Putting that aside, I understand that members of the police have been regularly opposing bills to do away with or to reduce the penalty for possession of marijuana. May I suggest that the more typical approach of very knowledgeable and experienced police and law enforcement individuals, including many judges, is reflected in the policies and programs of a national organization known as LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. It is composed of, they claim, 30,000 retired law enforcement officers and judges who have been sickened and appalled by the negative consequences of the war against drugs and especially the war against marijuana, including their own conduct while waging that war. They would decriminalize use of marijuana. Their director, Neil Franklin, who has visited Hawaii and addressed members of the Drug Policy Forum and their guests, has prepared an excellent statement, too long for testimony, which I have sent to each member of this committee, and I hope you'll take a look at it. It's very cogent and very convincing. You may rightly ask if many of the most experienced and knowledgeable retired police officers and judges are opposed to criminalizing marijuana, why would our police officers testify in favor of retaining criminal penalties for possessing it? I think, and I suggest, the short answer is the state's forfeiture program, HRS Section 712 et sequitur, which requires the Attorney General at the state level, with similar laws, by the way, at the federal level, to seize property used by those who violate the drug laws and to give it or the proceeds of its sale to various governmental agencies, especially to the police, to fund their programs. In fiscal year 2011...
I'm sorry, I've been making everybody else wrap up too, so if you could end quickly.
Well, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars were involved, and a substantial amount of it in 1 year went to the police departments in this state. It is a source of income, and that is a good reason for not changing the law regarding marijuana.
Okay.
That is what I'm suggesting.
Thank you very much. Next is Nina Ota in opposition, David Pettis in support, Joseph Bobbage in support, Mark Furatani in opposition, Rustin Smith, Hard Knocks Incorporated in support, Shannon Rudolph in support, Edwin Moriwaki in opposition, Georgina McKinley in support, Keith Kamita, I think you already spoke, or okay, thanks. Next is Lori Kano in opposition, Rachel Kamita in opposition, Miley Kanimaro in opposition, Scott Temple in support, Karen Hue Singh in support, Brian Metzko in support, Dennis Shields, the Religion of Jesus Church in support. That's all the on-time testimony we have. Let's see if we have any more here. James Rodriguez and Susan Dowsett. That's all the written testimony we have. Anyone else wishing to testify on HB 472? Please. We called your name earlier, Mr. Dame, but you ignored me, I guess. I don't know. How you doing this afternoon?
I was en route. I apologize for being late. My name's Bart Dame. I have short testimony for a change. I'm testifying on behalf of Progressive Democrats of Hawaii. We strongly support SB 472, which calls for decriminalizing possession of small amounts of marijuana and subjecting violations to a civil fine of $100 in the draft being proposed. While we support the complete legalization of marijuana, we believe this legislation is a significant step forward in adopting a more sensible approach towards the use of marijuana than the current punitive criminal approach, which we believe to be highly irrational and destructive, both in its immediate effects upon those who use marijuana and their families, but also upon the legitimacy of our legal system. We believe the current approach also reinforces an irrational, moralistic attitude towards recreational drug use, which undermines effective education about and treatment for actual drug abuse. We do not believe all drug use is inherently harmful, whether of legal drugs or illegal drugs. We believe the prohibition against marijuana is rooted in extreme prejudice and an authoritarian attitude which holds that some people are able to impose their ideas of normalcy, their ideas on the proper way for people to pursue happiness upon others. We also believe that some legal drugs like alcohol and tobacco are not only tolerated, but have created great wealth for powerful corporations who in turn contribute to politicians, sponsor sports events, and are able to protect their form of vice from the unreasonable tyranny of the police and the courts, despite the fact they are generally more harmful than marijuana. But we also recognize the complete... My worst critic. But we also recognize that complete legalization is a much larger step than some legislators, as well as some members of the public, are willing to take at this time. So we will support this bill as a significant step in reducing harm, and we believe that harm reduction, combined with respect for individual liberty, should guide drug policies, not prejudice. As Mark Twain famously said, nothing so needs reforming as other people's habits. So let's take some wisdom from one of America's greatest writers and move forwards towards a sane drug policy. Thank you.
Very much. Next, anyone else wish to speak on SB 472? Going once, going twice. Oh yeah, here we go. Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, honorable elected people. I'm Suzanne Sullivan, and I'm here, and I'm a tourist. I frequent your lovely grounds in the winter, and I came on another issue, but this brought interest to me also. I've never smoked, inhaled, tasted. Don't do that. My brother, however, a 47-year-old college graduate, never stopped. I saw the destroying of his life and his marriage and his wife. His kids got involved, and it's been said, like, you know, his elevator goes up, but it never reaches the top floor. So to think that marijuana is not impactful is wrong. It is a drug. It's classified as a drug, and I believe it should be used for medical use. So it's a drug that's used for medical use, and it does have a realignment, adjustment of your mental and your reaction time. Why would you want kids to think it's okay? You're not going to give your kids a bottle of alcohol. Why would you want to give them a stick of whatever they call it, you know, of marijuana? I can't understand that. So therefore, I really am not support of decriminalization of it. They need to stand firm and protect the kids, because I'm for the kids and for our lifestyle. And I've seen in my own personal family how it's been detrimental. And I do believe that we need to have it as a drug for the veterans and for the people who need it for medical use. But that's a whole different use. And I've seen it in the family, and they go to the kids sell. It's a bad thing. Please do not legalize it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify in SB 472? Please come forward. Afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Chair Rhoads, Vice Chair Har. I shaved this morning, and so I looked in the mirror, and I'm
sorry. Could you just?
I'm sorry. My name is Sean James Levy, and this morning I shaved, and I look a lot quite like I did when I was in high school. So I'm going to attempt to represent the youth voice here. There's a lot of concern to protect the youth, and I think that is very important. But what we're forgetting is that the fact that it's illegal actually puts a certain enchantment around youth use of this drug. It's the cookie jar you put on the shelf, don't touch that. It's the nature of youth to go there, to transgress, to push boundaries. And so if we're going to normalize this, take it away from the criminal element that is truly deleterious, this is the kind of middle path that will assist in that way. And the concerns from the law enforcement community, which are very valid, I think are misguided, because if you say it's all bad, then it doesn't prevent the youth use, and it gets more, it may kill personal ambition, but if you get, like the fellow said from Windward Community College, if you get the financial aid cut off, flunked out of school, all of this, it's a future killer, instead of ambition killer. So the use of the criminalization is more negative than the drug itself, and I thank you for supporting this measure.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to testify in SB 472? Please come forward. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Trisha Nakamatsu. I'm sorry I didn't submit any written testimony. I am testifying as an individual on my own behalf. I didn't even tell John I was going to testify, but it just occurred to me about 5 minutes ago to do this. For whatever reasons, through whatever decisions or circumstances in my life, I've never been involved with marijuana, never been a part of my life whatsoever. Some of my friends have smoked it to various ends in the course of their lives. But until recently, last year, my 14-year-old cousin was arrested for not only smoking marijuana, but convincing all of her friends to smoke marijuana with her as well. Her mom, my aunt, in her wisdom, forced my cousin to write a letter to the entire family, notifying us and apologizing to us for her bad behavior and saying that she wouldn't do it again. So I talked to her afterwards, and I told her, it's not a good choice, it's not good for you, it's not healthy. I mean, there's been lots of different ways. And her response was, she and I have a very close relationship, generally speaking. She's very open. She said, "What's the big deal?" She says, I've seen my friend's parents smoking it. I've seen teachers smoking it. I don't know how she saw that, but she apparently has. And that was basically her conclusion. What's the big deal? Then a week and a half ago, I found out that my boyfriend's younger brother, who is currently, He just turned 20 years old. He was arrested for possession of marijuana. And when I talked to him about it, I just asked him, well, you know, why are you doing this? He's a really bright kid, very good kid, very intelligent. And he said, he said, it's not that bad, basically. He said it's not that bad. And 6 months from now, it won't even be a crime. I don't know what led him to believe that, but he said it's not even going to be illegal pretty soon. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm very upset about this, but I just wanted to let you know that that is the mentality that's growing among the youth. And these are both kids that come from very good families, hardworking parents who are well educated, provide excellent livings for their kids, and are very devoted parents, attentive parents. But that's just the growing mentality among the kids. And the closer you come to making this, just simply by not making it a crime, the closer you come to telling them that it's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, anyone else wish to testify on SB 472? Okay, seeing none. Members' questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next bill, which is... Okay, going back into decision-making. Well, I forgot to check whether we had a quorum.
We do.
Okay. Going back into decision-making for the Judiciary Committee. First up, we have SB 472 SD1, which we put out a proposed HD1. Essentially, it makes possession of 20 grams or less of marijuana a civil violation for those 18 and over. That's what the HD1 does. The recommendation of the committee is to pass out with the HD1 as the base, so there'll be all those changes from the proposed HD1, but then to add a purpose section to reflect that possession and use of marijuana by minors will remain prohibited activity with criminal sanctions for possession, just as they currently have. So this bill would affect only those 18 and older. I mean, it would affect the decriminalization of marijuana would only affect the 18 and over. It would also include some language in a purpose section that indicates that the committee believes that, I don't know what the committee believes, scientific evidence indicates that pakalolo use by minors, it has much more detrimental effects than pakalolo use by adults, and that's why we're maintaining the criminal sanctions for minors. I would also recommend that we remove Section 7 of the bill. This would remove the assumption that possession of 20 grams or less does not constitute intent to distribute near schools or parks, and would add a provision that a minor adjudicated to have his or her possession of any amount of pakalolo. In other words, if under the criminal sanctions that would remain in the bill, a minor it's because they're a minor, it's not considered a conviction. I believe it's called an adjudication. If they're adjudicated to have possessed marijuana, if they have a driver's license, it will be suspended for 1 year. And then some minor changes to the promoting detrimental drugs in the various degrees. For first degrees, instead of 1 pound, it would be 400 grams, which is less than 1 pound. For the second degree, it would be between 20 grams and 400 grams. 400 grams is less than a pound. 20 grams is less than an ounce. So these are actually make it a little bit stricter. And then for third degree, any amount up to 20 grams, but that would only apply to minors. And there would also be technical changes. Questions, comments? Vice Chair Har.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Chair, I want to thank you very much for the amendments. I think that they were very deliberate and thoughtful with respect to minors. However, as I've stated previously, the fact here is that marijuana still remains a Schedule I controlled substance under federal law. It remains a violation of federal law to grow, distribute, or use marijuana. And so while other states have decriminalized marijuana, and in fact we have 2 states that have legalized it, I feel that as a representative of a district that has many young families, I think I have one of the younger demographics, first-time home buyers, first-time parents, this really does send the wrong message to our children. You know, we do have a medical marijuana law, which I think can address some of the issues of compassion. Many of the people who did testify in support of this measure were medical marijuana users. And the fact that this bill explicitly does not apply to those who are part of the Hawaii's medical marijuana program is clear to me that we're just moving in the wrong direction. I don't think this sends the right message to our children. I think it is going to exacerbate criminal activity, everything from selling, dealing, etc. And I just think that this is really the wrong direction that the House is taking. Notwithstanding my comments, Chair, out of respect for you, I will be voting with very, very strong reservations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Also, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this when I described it, but I would also like to put a effective upon approval effective date, because it's already a change from the draft, so it will go to conference, but effective upon approval. Anything else? Okay, seeing none.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Voting on Senate Bill 472, Senate Draft 1. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes with reservations. Representative Bellotti.
Aye.
Representative Brower. Aye. Representative Cabanilla. Excused. Representative Carroll. Excused. Representative Ito.
With reservations.
Representative Kawakami.
Aye.
Representative Lee.
Aye.
Representative Suji.
WR.
Representative Woolley. Aye. Representative McDermott.
No.
Representative Thielen.
Aye.
Chair, the recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is SB 19.